for the panel.
Yes.
Please take a seat. Hillel, a few years ago, Israeli member of the Knesset of the Parliament, Naftali Bennett, was here, and he told a story about having taken a delegation of Agtech specialists to India, and they were showing them drip irrigation and other ways to use Israeli technology and know-how to expand 1 square meter of land from 20 cucumbers to more, and they ended up growing 100 cucumbers per square meter where there used to be 20, using Israeli know-how. The Indians apparently said to them, well, what are we going to do with all of those cucumbers? And he said, we're going to teach you other Israeli technology. It's called pickling. We're now going to move to the next panel, and it's moderated by Craig Shapiro, the CEO and founder of the Blue River Group. And the participants do include Hillel. So thank you for staying on. Please make welcome Craig Shapiro. Thanks, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. And again, thank you to Etty and her team for putting on such a wonderful event and really bringing Australia and Israel even closer together. I'm Craig Shapiro, the co-CEO and founder of Blue River Group. And Blue River Group is an impact investment services firm. And we love putting deals together in the impact space where we can make a commercial return, and we marry that with a positive or social, environmental, positive and measurable social or environmental outcome. So hearing that we have an esteemed member of our panel who is focused on impact funds is fantastic. So I might get the other panel members to come up. We've got Ben, Campbell and Gil. And what we've got a clear objective on our panel today. We did have a bit of a chat about it. And we want to prove that we don't need to do it alone. One of the key learnings from anyone who has been to Israel is that one of the reasons why Israel's been so successful is collaboration. And Ben's from KPMG, and he's going to give us some really interesting insights into a report that KPMG helped publish, and that's one of the key themes, and I think we want to come away from that. So from a Blue River perspective, why we're interested in Israel is because of ag. And why ag? We took the simple concept that Israel are farming in the desert and doing incredible things, and Australia is mostly desert, so why aren't we doing more together? It's a really, really simple idea. And so I'd like the panel to be able to explore that and leave you at the end of the discussion with a deeper understanding of the ag sector and why it's such a great opportunity for Australia. The mining boom is over, and the next boom has to be the ag boom. And Dov Moran, I think, gave a great segue for this panel. He said that, I wrote it down and I'm just going to find it. He said that we should make yourself the best in something. Well, we already have a natural resource, which is the agricultural sector. So I think we're already there, and if we can join with Israel and others around the world to learn, then I think we're going to be well placed. So what I'll do is I'll get each of the panel members to introduce themselves for 2 seconds, and then we're going to paint the scene for why Israel is so good, and then we're going to come back and explain why Australia has an opportunity to leverage this and see some of the great things that we're already doing in the space. So, Hillel, maybe I guess you've already introduced yourself, but maybe a bit more about your background before AquAgro 1, just very quickly.
Okay. I was not born a venture capitalist. Before being a venture capitalist, I was in the tech industry, actually managed one of Israel's first startups. I'm one of the guys who are fortunate enough to have started the VC industry in Israel in '93. I'm on my fifth fund. I invested in a little over 60 companies. And in this little pie chart that was here about half an hour ago in terms of exits, I'll say that I had multiple exits. So this is short background.
So in summary, we have a legend from the Israeli VC market sitting before us. Ben.
Hi, thank you. I guess agribusiness and agtech is not something I chose, it chose me. So I was born into an entrepreneurial family that was heavily involved in the primary industry across in New Zealand. And it's been a fortunate path through professional services to be able to really support businesses that are operating in that space now as a partner at KPMG. So my role is to head Agtech for KPMG in Australia, and I'm part of the global agribusiness community that KPMG has.
So I guess we'll call you the thought leader on our panel then. So go on. Gil.
So I'm coming from EQUInom. You already heard what we are doing here. Actually, my background is plant genetics, and let's say there was dramatic change, technology changing in the sequencing technology that probably not all of you are aware of, but EQUInom is based on the reduction of sequencing technology, and we took advantage of that to make better breeding. And we see Australia as one of our strategic area to explore this potential, because of Australia is mainly agriculture at the end.
Fantastic. So an entrepreneur with a science background, so something that we've been talking about here in Australia quite a lot recently. And Campbell.
Thanks, Craig. Well, ladies and gentlemen, SwarmFarm robotics is about a new way of farming. It's breakthrough technology, but using technology that's actually been ultimately proven in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and on the surface of Mars. So we might just cue the video that I've got, and I'll talk to this. I apologise, it's a bit jerky, it's very raw, it's only 48 hours old.
So Campbell, you might want to introduce yourself to those who aren't familiar with who you are.
Well,
So.
Past life, I dabbled in politics for a while as Lord Mayor of our third largest city in Brisbane, and also Premier of the state of Queensland. But I'm an engineer, a builder of infrastructure. I worked in the grain handling industry as well. So if we just cue that video, if we can find it there. Basically, SwarmFarm robotics is about changing the way that we farm. So in the last 60 years, we've had huge productivity gains in the way that we grow food. How do we do that? Well, there was the green revolution, plant breeding, the use of chemicals and fertilisers, but we also particularly got big gains through the use of very large machines. And particularly the machines became bigger and larger, much heavier, and very complex and expensive. And so a farmer who is the founder of SwarmFarm, Andrew Bate, developed a concept of farming using small, lightweight, low-cost machines working in swarms. Essentially, if you picture a plantation in the deep south of the US hundreds of years ago, what did you see? You saw men and women and children working laboriously, tending the crops, chipping away the weeds, giving individual plant attention. Well, if we think about what the origination of the word robot is, it's the Czech word for slave. And essentially that's what we're saying. We're saying by using small, lightweight, low-cost machines, we can actually give individual plant attention, and we can see a whole lot of great advantages. Improved yields, massive increases in yields, reduced use of chemicals and pesticides, herbicides, fertiliser, reduced soil compaction, which reduces yields. We can see reduction in soil erosion. We can see greater efforts by farmers to be involved in the strategic planning of their farms, rather than going out and doing manual labour, actually spending more time analysing data that the machines can gather, and actually then deploying that into the operations of their farm. I don't know why we're not seeing it on the screens in front of us. Sure. I wasn't sure if it was going. Yeah. But what you're seeing there, and I'll just start to wind up, conscious of time, but this is an Australian, indeed a world first. You're seeing stuff that happened only 2 days ago in central Queensland. This is what we call the SwarmBot 3 prototype. So we've had 3 prototypes that we've developed to date. This is 4 SwarmBot 3 machines operating together in a paddock on a weed spraying operation. And I guess the The idea is that these machines not only in the future will be able to spray weeds, but they'll also be able to plant the crop, plant the seed, so hopefully your sesame, apply fertiliser with precision, actually, of course, spray weeds, kill bugs, and ultimately the holy grail after applying that fertiliser is also to harvest the crop. One machine. So another advantage is greater capital utilisation, which is a big issue in farming. So those are the machines, and I suppose the final word, and somewhere in there, and that's on cue actually. So you'll see a logo there, Adama. The Israelis will know this name well. A very large Israeli-based chemical company who are strongly supporting the company, and we're very proud to be actually making a big announcement with Adama shortly about taking this product and this I suppose, philosophy of farming to the world.
Fantastic. So we actually have an Australian success story right before our very eyes. So in terms of half glass full, we know there's lots of challenges, but it's actually happening. So it's fantastic that you've been able to bring that video with you today. I might flip to Ben. I've switched it around a little bit, but Ben helped co-author a report on the Agtech sector, and it's almost the Bible for what needs to happen for us here in Australia, and it's reflected on learnings around the world. So Ben, do you want to spend a couple of minutes just running through the key themes, because I think that'll help shape a lot of what we talk about for the rest of the panel discussion.
Sure, absolutely. Very happy to do that. So the work was done in conjunction with Startup Australia and, of course, the State of Queensland Government and CBA. We looked at the opportunity that agribusiness and agtech particularly presents for Australia. And just to give you a quick snapshot, hopefully what you can see on the screen, I can see it on my screen. If that can come up. We're a $57 billion industry in terms of agribusiness here in Australia. We export $43 billion worth of product. So we are essentially a major contributor to the global food supply, and we are self-sufficient largely. So around about 93% of our food that we need, we produce locally. But we have a number of problems. We farm 50% of Australia's landmass, and as Craig mentioned, we have a large area of desert and dry land. So a major opportunity for us to really enhance the productivity that we can get out of that area of land. We are spending a considerable amount of money on weed control, about $1.5 billion. So the work that SwarmFarms are doing is certainly leveraging the opportunity to bring precision agriculture to solving that problem. It is holding back productivity in Australia, which across most components of agribusiness has seen a bit of a tail off. So we do need to drive productivity gain using technology. We see agtech as a major opportunity for Australia to develop a new export industry, and that is the technology in its own right. But we have a lot of challenges, and that's why it's important to be connecting internationally with players from Israel, from the US, Canada, and the UK, who we think are four of the major players in this space. There are others, of course, but our report looked certainly at the strengths of those areas. Just briefly, in terms of what did we find, we think there's about $190 billion opportunity over the next 6-7 years in terms of agtech. But for Australia to really leverage that opportunity, we have to get a number of things right. Particularly, we've got to get a national direction around where we want to go with this industry. It's not going to happen by accident. We have a lot of fragmented research taking place. We have 41 universities in Australia, each dabbling in some way in agriculture, and we need to bring greater clarity around where that effort goes. And we also need to address our connectivity challenges. The difference between Israel and Australia is largely scale of land and the amount of technology connection that you can get. So our growers are challenged by the access to connectivity to internet, so that really holds back IoT. And the other point really is around capital. So how do we get greater investment into the sector? I think we can learn a lot from Israel in that regard, Craig. So hopefully on the screen now you can see the 12 recommendations. We can go into that perhaps a bit later.
Great, fantastic. So I might turn it to our Israeli guests. Maybe 3 reasons from each of you as to why Israel is such a leader in being able to farm in the desert? What's the secret sauce that we can bring to Australia? Maybe Gil?
I think Israel it's a kind of a lab, you know. We have been in the US for our sesame trials, and we spoke with growers over there, and we calculate one grower in the US is half of the Israeli field of cotton. One grower in the US, and the grower in the US is the grower in Australia is 10 times bigger than the growers in the US. So we are just playing in our gardens in Israel. The advantage is that everything is very close. You know, the science, the fields, the persons responsible on irrigations, fertilizations, everything is very close. So you close the loops quite fast. So and this is a lab. And I think this is advantage of Israel having so a lot of breeding a lot of crops and have a lot of innovations in agriculture. Everything is closed very fast.
So we haven't got that benefit in Australia. So does that mean we should be creating lots of little mini Israels all over Australia?
No, but we need to scale it up.
Yeah. And Hillel, what do you think makes the secret sauce for why the ag sector is so successful in Israel?
First of all, necessity. I mean, we have over half of Israel is desert. So you either declare it a lost case or you try to do something with it. And we are short of land. So I think a lot of it is related to the entrepreneurial spirit that is ingrained in Israel. And it didn't start 23 years ago. I mean, my parents, which started the kibbutz in 1939, were sort of entrepreneurs. This kibbutz happened to be the pioneer in the world in bioinsecticizing and herbiciding. So it's not limited to high tech. Plus, there is a concerted effort by the government of Israel to participate. The largest institution in Israel for agro development is a government-owned operation called Vulcani. And it employs about 1,000 scientists, engineers, and they deal with every possible aspect of agriculture, from any possible crop to machinery to aquaculture. So this is built into the system.
So the ecosystem, government, collaboration, Ben, what can we be doing and what needs to happen over and above what NISA, the National Innovation Science Agenda, is put on the table for Australia to start getting that happening with results in Australia?
A lot. And, you know, I think necessity is a perfect summary. If you think about the scale differences, the advantage Israel has is you can wrap your arms around it tightly. Arguably the disadvantage or difference to Australia is the massive geographic scale. But there is no reason in today's age that we can't be better connected. I think to enable that we need really strong focus and support at a governmental level, and I see that as a difference when we looked at the comparability between Australia and Israel. And I think with that comes a focus on incentives that are focusing on research and development that link to commercialisation. It's one of the big challenges. We have some fabulous research facilities here in Australia, but we start with the joy of the research, not the joy of the commercialisation. And I think from that we need to really take some lessons from Israel around the royalty structure that you have around the R&D incentive scheme. We've also got some other fundamental differences. We have to attract talent into the sector. We have been competing against mining and financial services for a long time. The average age of a farmer is 57. The average farmer in Israel, I understand, is 30 and has a PhD. Well, that's quite different to the environment that we have. And, you know, we're not known for our collaboration between the private sector and the research and government sectors. In fact, we are the lowest on the OECD score in that regard, and that's disappointing. But we have lots to be proud of. We're doing some great work.
I think, Campbell, you want to add to that, but when you add your thoughts on that, I want to know whether you need to be an ex-Premier of Queensland to get a start-up in the ag space happening in Australia.
I don't know about that, but look, just to go on to the back of that, I mean, you said I should spice things up a bit earlier on. Well, here it is. So the research and development in ag in Australia is funded by the Commonwealth and by grower levies, which goes into things called RDCs, Research and Development Corporations. Sugar Research Australia, Horticulture and Innovation Australia, the Cotton Research Development Corporation, you get the drift. The whole thing is set up so that the money goes from the Commonwealth and the growers to the RDCs. The RDCs disperse the money. Who do they disperse money to? Universities. If you're a startup like SwarmFarm, you can't directly get money from the RDCs. So it is R, there's no D. It's a huge problem. It is a huge problem and it needs to be addressed because it will continue on, and there's some really perverse outcomes where stuff's being developed on the back of money that's been spent. Well, the funds from Australian ag producers, their money is being used to produce technology which is then being licensed to international companies, not Australian companies. And
So-
a startup like us can't get our hands on it. There you go.
So who needs to make the first move to change that? Is it the corporate sector or is it the...
It's the federal government who've got to change the rules to make it possible for the RDCs to partner with commercial entities. There's a bucket load of money, but it all goes to the unis. And I'm not trying to say they shouldn't get that money. Ours, very important, obviously, but that's why we're not seeing it go into the D. And people keep talking about it ain't going to D. That's a big reason why it ain't going to D in the ag sector.
Yeah.
Absolutely and unequivocally.
So in Israel, there's money that's attracted to the ag sector. You've already raised money, Gil, and you've had huge success as well. So what are the type of investors that are actually investing in that space? Because I think if we have capital going to the ag sector in Australia, it starts alleviating some of the problems you just talked about, Campbell, because there's private equity, so you're not relying on that circular loop. So maybe Hillel and Gil, you could talk about the types of investors and what they're looking for. Are they different to the high-tech investors or the cybersecurity investors?
I can talk about the content of our LPs. So when we went out to raise the first fund, it was very clear to us that institutional money is not going to get there because by definition, we were a first-time fund because of the new sector. And regardless of track record, we knew that this is going to be the case. So we went after family offices, and almost 100% of 96% of the capital in our fund is from family offices, almost half and half between Europe and the United States. When you talk about people who co-invest with us, then it can be other funds that are on the ground, whether in Israel or outside Israel. PEs are definitely looking for opportunities, but we all know that the stage that they are looking for is not the stage that we are investing. We are really preparing the companies for them. So there are a limited amount of VCs and private investors.
Okay. And Gil, you sort of explained some of your investors, but are you finding from other countries as well that are interested?
Actually, my experience was strategic investors. VCs, it's not for them. You're talking about time to market, 5 to 7 years, and they double it to 2. So it's you're not for VCs. I mean, at the first stage that we founded EQUInom, of course, now it's much more easy when you have multinational companies in the company, so everybody knows to come, of course. This is the way of life. I think one of the major problems in the ag sector is, first of all, it's time to market. You cannot play with it. It takes time. That's it. That's the game. The second problem is that, referring to the subject that we discussed before, everybody is counting on governmental fund, but I think it's a mistake because do Google count on governmental fund? we are here to make money. Even if I'm doing agriculture, at the end of the game, everybody wants to make money from the companies because this is why companies is existing. Somehow, somebody decide that agriculture is for humanity. That's the reason, probably, I believe, let's say in Australia, a lot of money comes from government, stay in the research area, and do not go out to commercialization because it's governmental fund. So I think, don't count on governmental fund because it's not evaluated economically in the right way, I believe.
Yeah, I think we need to change the dialogue that we have here in Australia around the role of food and agriculture. So just yesterday I was with the Australian Food Grocery Council in Canberra, and we were talking about how the manufacturing sector has really shrunk in Australia. Well, that's a good thing for the food industry because we're now a third of Australia's manufacturing. So if you're a third of Australia's manufacturing, then people need to pay attention to the opportunity that this market presents. And when I think about where we get interest from investment in Australia around the topic of Agtech, it is family offices. It is also very much the large banks are starting to think about putting funds together. And why is that? Well, they, like KPMG, have the large-scale clients that definitely need this disruption, this new technology, this innovation, just to maintain the large tier one scale agribusinesses that we depend on here in Australia. And then beyond that, there is a lot of inbound interest in terms of creating funds, but not exclusively with foreign capital. They definitely want to partner with Australian capital and people that understand the marketplace and can get the right opportunities, like Campbell's business and others. There are north of 100 Agtech operations in Australia, and they're growing every day. There was 1,200 people at an event last week just talking about food tech and Agtech. This market is going to go off. We just need to help connect the capital to the opportunities.
So in terms of Australia-Israel collaboration, we actually have living collaboration here because Hillel, well, he's looking for capital from Australia, but there's also the potential for projects in Australia. And Gil, you're not looking for cash, you're looking for partners. So maybe you can just, and Campbell, I think I'd like to hear about what capital you've been raising and what your plans are to see where that's coming from, and maybe there's an opportunity in Israel from that. But maybe each of you could just run through how you've been going, how your experience has been speaking to investors, Gil, how you've been going in terms of finding partners, and Campbell, your plans for additional capital.
I would say too early to call because even when you have good meetings in raising capital for a fund, you can expect several meetings before the money is transferred, if it is transferred. So I would say good initial meetings. I'm an optimistic, cynical guy, so I tend to manage my expectations. So I think it was a good trip so far. We, of course, want in the next trip here to really look for opportunities for investment.
And Gil, how are you going in terms of looking for partners? It's only been a couple of days, but positive?
Yeah, I don't know yet because we only started, but we are going to be here for a week and a half traveling in the area that we want to grow the sesame. But the sesame is only one story of our companies. Just to make the story shorter, is that EQUInom is actually is a breeding company that we know to do the breeding in a very accurate manner, and we see that the food industry is changing dramatically by saying we want better food, healthier food. That means that if, let's say, 10 years ago you want to buy a cake with a jelly and you want that the color will be natural, today you don't want the jelly and you don't want the color to be natural, you don't want it at all. You want to be as natural as you want. That means that the responsibility of the quality of the ingredient is on the breeder. So if you don't have the right technology to improve the qualities of the grain, you will never improve the ingredient. That means that your product will not be the qualities that the food industry wants to sell at the end of the process. So we are working now on sesame, we're working on proteins, and we are looking on other ingredients that are relevant for the food industry.
Great. Campbell? Cash in Australia, what's it like? What's the experience like?
Well, to date, we've raised $2.7 million. By the way, what you saw on the screen there was about $800,000 worth of equipment trundling around. In fact, we've got a fifth machine, which was sort of not working at the time. So we've got $1 million worth of robots. We've got some technical things that we have to conquer over the next sort of 6 or 7 months. Particularly the issue of developing a graphical user interface where farmers can then use the thing very easily, so they can set out a paddock and say, well, I've got 3 robots and they're now going to go on do a particular task. But those things are all quite achievable and doable. Our plan is to manufacture and sell 50 robots in the 2017-18 financial year and sell them to early adopter farmers here in Australia. Our vision, though, is to go to the United States. That's where this will really be big. And at the moment, we're really developing our business plan, and it's quite a conservative one. But essentially, what we need at the moment is we need about $4 million to cover the 18-19, I should start again. It was 18-19. Sorry, 17-18 and 18-19 financial years, we need $4 million to cover really the human resources that we need to employ to get this thing going. We've got a manufacturing partner that we're working with at the moment. It's an international company who will build our robots and help us value engineer them in collaboration with our own technical team. We've got an arrangement with Adama, which I can't talk about yet because it isn't announced, but you could sort of make a few guesses on that front. We've got strong support from Westpac Agribusiness and Elders, and indeed Telstra as other sort of sponsoring partners. And the bottom line is that we want to get into the game of selling our product in the next financial year and taking it globally over a 5-year period.
Fantastic.
So that's what we're about, and we're keen to talk to people who want to not just bring the money but bring the expertise. One final thing is we've got a very large international energy company who look like they're going to give us a contract over 2 years for us to take our robotic technology and use it around one of their energy projects to literally go after weeds rather than have human beings go off and spray them.
Great. Robotics is a bit of a theme today. So, are there any questions from the floor? We've got a few minutes left.
Campbell, with the Conservative government in place, what's been done to address the issues that you identified? With the Conservative government in place, what's been done so far to try and address the issues that you've identified in terms of funds going to research and more funds going to development?
Good question. Well, as it happens, I'm actually, one of the other things I do these days is do a segment on Sky News with Andrew Bolt on Monday nights. And this coming Monday, I'm not just going to be doing Bolt, but also be doing a panel with Peter Beattie, so the former Labor Premier of Queensland, the former LNP Premier of Queensland, will be side by side on this subject. And I'm going to bring this up because I think we have made great progress. We've got a Prime Minister who's talking the talk, but some of these detailed issues, these roadblocks have to be sorted out. And I asked Peter if we could make the show about that so we could really try and highlight some of these things. I have raised them with people, but frankly, I raised it with one of the cabinet members only a few months ago at the Rice Growers Conference. So I'm out there quietly pushing in the background, but I frankly don't see them getting it and getting into the details. So I've got to, if people care about this stuff, it's got to be pushed.
Thanks. Any more questions from the floor? So maybe Ben, we've got a couple of minutes left, but what's the next step for Australia? I mean, it's clear that collaboration's happening. It is happening between Australia and Israel and other countries. But if we want to take it to the next level now, what do you think are the key steps that need to occur?
Well, we identified 12 recommendations, which we had up on the slides earlier. There's probably the most fundamental step that we can take that will enable the rest of the 11 recommendations to come to fruition is the concept of an Agtech marketplace, a portal, if you like, that enables the world to see the opportunity that exists in Australia in the context of what solutions are already here that have been developed in Australia, which as the world looks at those, they might find adaptation to apply in other markets. And also for the farmer-grower community to be able to comment on what gaps they have, so what problems are not yet met by technology solutions, and where are the research projects focused at the moment. To Campbell's point, one of the big challenges we have with the RDC structure is that they are very siloed in terms of what they focus on, yet many of our growers are multi-producers, so they might have some grain growing on their property, but they're also in the beef sector. So we need to find ways to actually help people see through those silos. And in addition, we need to be able to get people commenting on the quality of the products, iterating on them. So we think the marketplace will create a bit more of a laser focus on the AgTech opportunity. I think we need to help government, and Campbell, maybe you can bring this up on Monday. There is a large amount of investment that the government's prepared to put into finding solutions to replace the automotive manufacturing industry in Australia. We just need to help them get that money out to people who can use it for technology, sensor technology development, etc., because that's the future industry for Australia.
Yeah. Right. Well, that brings the panel to the end of the conclusion, to a conclusion. But the previous panel was about manufacturing 4.0, and that's about smart factories. Well, I think this is about smart farming, and the collaboration that can drive that between Australia and Israel is here before us. So, if you could join me in thanking the panelists today.